Hello, welcome to the next episode of Out of Place But Effective. This one is episode 8, Out of Place But Effective. This one is going to be talking about captured tanks. As you're hearing, this is not a British crew in this Churchill, it is a German one. This can also be identified by the Iron Cross on the side. So, we're going to talk about the Americans and the British in capturing vehicles before we talk about the Germans and Russians. The Japanese did not capture tanks. They did capture some B-19s, but they were never used in combat, mostly just used as showing what they could do. But those aren't tanks, those are planes. So, the Americans and British captured vehicles to learn about them, to learn how to beat them. There's a very good image that I can't find again of a British manual showing a picture of a tiger's frontal plate and where not to pin it and where to shoot it. It's allowing vehicles to learn, crews to learn how to beat this seemingly undefeated German armor, and it was something that the British did just to fill the gap. Now, the Germans, on the other hand, near the end of the war and even at the beginning of the war, would use whatever they could. So, besides, there are a few vehicles that I don't have access to in the game, but I can tell you what they were. There are a few French vehicles that they captured or found. Yeah, they found them in their own way. Being the H-39 and the B-1 Char Bis. I'm pulling from Tanks of the World 1915-1945, Peter Chamberlain and Chris Ellis. Now, this B-1 Bis has been modified, because the Germans actually called it the B-1 Flammen. If you didn't put that together, that means the Germans put a flamethrower on it. Everybody used flamethrower tanks. You just gotta look hard enough. And they also used the L3, which also used mainly machine guns. They could have used this flamethrower variant, but I'm not sure. It's up to whatever you're looking for. And they also used Matilda as well, which they renamed to Infantry Panzerkampfwagen. So, infantry tank. Woohoo. That is a long name. So, other than that, they also did use a Sherman. But all to say that these vehicles, as you saw, that Churchill was rather unmodified compared to a normal standard Churchill. The reasoning for that? Well, they didn't need to. There was no upgrading needing to be done. There was on other vehicles. One of the biggest ones is the Russian KV-1B. Not that one. Not any of those. This one. Hello. As you can see, this is the KW-1C756R. No idea what the R stands for. I looked and it's like, So as you can see, they modified this thing. Normally, the KV-1 turrets didn't have this nice cupola here, but the Russians added it. And that was pretty much one of the only modifications besides this nice 75mm gun that was the German gun, not the 76 that the Russians put on it. It performed about the same, but it was a pain. The Finnish, working with the Germans, also did capture a KV-1, being this one, and this one's actually an up-armored variant, making it even more of a pain, because the Russians learned the hard way once this thing came out, that, well, they couldn't do anything about it, because the KV-1s are hard to kill. Generally, most KV-1s were killed with mobility kills, or just were ignored by the Russians and Germans. But they were also so enamored with the KV-2 that they did this. This is a KV-2 that the Germans modified. Why? Well, because they could. And also they like adding cupolas to almost everything. I don't understand why this thing needed a cupola. But I don't know. And a cupola is this. The Germans just added it to so many different vehicles. Well, mainly just the KV-1 and this KV-2. Because they could. They also did this. This is a T-34. As you can tell, it has some upgrades. It had its increased frontal plate, but beyond that, nothing else. And it was just an upgrade to give it some extra armor. And it has a slightly taller cupola, but generally not much modification. But it was mainly pretty much just done to slightly modify it. And make it still usable by the German army, but these were used very sparingly. There was also a Sherman variant named the M4 or 787 Echo. I think most of these are designating that it was just something they needed and to show it out. They did also have another one, which I don't think is available to me right now, called the M10 Etsta, which was a Panther modified to look like an M10. So they wanted this to look like that. Didn't work too well. Mainly because only 2 of them were made, and well, once we figured things out, it was done. But now, on to the Russians. The Russians, in the beginning of the war, had a problem. Their Su-76, which was a different variant to this one, the standard Su-76, was a pain. So they had to find a way to solve this. Well, they captured a Panzer III. Actually, I didn't even have to leave. So they captured one of these and converted it into the Su-76I. The Su-76I was extremely effective at doing its job, and was used a lot by the Russians. For a certain period of time, as a sort of stopgap vehicle. Why did it see so much use? Well, because crews liked it. Sadly, it's not in the game, but I can still give you the best examples I can through my words and by giving you ways to find it. Because again, we have the power of information at our fingertips. Some people can use it, some people don't. It's up to what we see. And I'm sorry, I can't do more. But it was brought into service in 1943. And actually, I'll give you a better look at this Panzer III. And yes, this is mostly what the Russians did with German vehicles. They called them T3. So, basically what they would do with these Su-76s is from the turret and above, from here and below, they'd cut everything off and give it its own non-turret mounted 76mm gun. That's the same gun from the T-34. Just over 200 of them were produced using the Panzer III and the Stug 3 hulls. The funniest thing about these Su-76Is was they were convertibles. Traditionally, they would have a plate over them that would be on there and was not welded on, it was simply attached, and it could be removed to act as sort of a removable roof, allowing them to have some climate control. So when it got too hot, they could just take the roof off and go. Well, what else did they capture? Well, they also captured 2 halves of a Panther. You might be confused by how I stated that. I'll explain in a moment. Where are you? I know you're here somewhere. Ah, the T5. So, let's look at this thing. So as you can notice, the turret and the body are 2 different things. 2 different colors. That's because the turret is from a different Panther than the body. Because they captured them both from different tanks. They also technically captured the mouse. But also they only captured 2 halves of a mouse. Because when they got there, the Germans tried to blow up their own tank. And the mouse was basically like, no, you did not blow me up. And the Russians went, I don't know how engineering works, but if I have 2 pieces of something, if I slap it together hard enough, it will work. I'm not meaning to insult them, I'm making a joke. And the Russians, basically, these were used sparingly. The main reason they were even done was because the Russians, like us, wanted to know how these vehicles worked. And yeah, I've ran out of those vehicles. But yeah, these vehicles were quite effective at doing their job when they needed them. Because the Su-76 was highly liked by many crews, but only used as a stopgap until the Su-76M was produced. And while I'm sad to say this does bring an end to our little escapade. So please do have a great time over this next coming while. Please do stay safe. This is Nathaniel Moore, and this was Out of Place but Effective. Have a great day, and have a great Christmas.